as a Chek practitioner, we talk about it's a marriage between the woo-woo, so the spiritual, and the practical. We do both. We have scientific knowledge as well as these metaphysical knowledge. And it's really a marriage of the two. So if someone's just one-sided, they're going to miss the boat. You can't just be only science and reading blood work. You have to be able to be intuitive and feeling what's happening at those deeper levels. So it's the body, mind, peace. What's going on with the chakras? What are they holding on to? What is their mental, emotional state like that could be influencing a disease?
I would like to welcome Angie Chek to the podcast. Angie is one of my teachers and mentors. She is a Chek faculty teacher, and she's also a biogeometry practitioner, which we're going to really delve into. And she's also a shaman. And so I'm very, very excited because what I've noticed with Angie as a teacher is she's got a really good way at explaining quite complex things and helping specifically me. Sometimes I have trouble grasping things, and you've got a really unique way of making learning fun and also driving it home. So it's really kind of almost deeply embodied in who we are. And so I've really loved learning with you and your wisdom and how you make learning fun. So I wanted to know a bit more about you and share you with my audience. And I guess the questions I wanted to start with is, how did it always begin? Have you always been like this? Was there any type of major event that kind of shifted you? So my personal experience is I think I had a lot of these abilities and intuitive gifts growing up, and I kind of suppressed them until I got quite sick in my mid-20s. And then I kind of started back on the holistic path, and it was the Chek Institute that actually brought me back to life. And were you one of these ones that was always like this, or did you have to have some type of major wake-up call?
Yeah, my story probably started when I was born. 3 months old, I had croup. I was diagnosed with croup, which is like a whooping cough. And so I was this sick child where I was always wheezing. It was called croup, and then later in life they called it asthma, and then exercise-induced asthma, and then bronchitis, and it was really debilitating. So it was so bad where I could not walk from my room to the bathroom, which was literally next door to my room. And I would collapse on the floor. And my brother was the healthy kid, always feeling great, and I was always like, why can't I? And so that started my early journey into nutrition and supplementation, herbs and things like that. So I started reading, like my favorite book to read when I was a kid, when I started reading, was the medical encyclopedia. And I would literally start reading that because I was like, Mom, I got to figure out what's wrong with me. And so I remember one time I was like 7, and I'm like, no, I'm dying of a heart attack. And she's like, yeah, but it was like heartburn, but I was just desperately trying to figure it out. And as a child, I had these intuitive gifts where I would have this intuition of what was going to happen. But I grew up in this very strict Catholic family, and some of my gifts of being able to talk to dead people or things like that were just taboo. It was just it was shunned. It was we don't do that, or we don't talk about that, or that's the work of the devil. So it really freaked me out. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to just be more saint-like and just go to Catholic school and be more Christ-like. And it wasn't until I was later in my years that I was like, I'm going to just kind of dabble in these things that I found interesting. So, dabbling with tarot cards or Ouija boards and just kind of learning about the metaphysical things about life and, what was not so obvious. And that's kind of how it started, is suppressing it, kind of like you, and then kind of welcoming it in. And then it wasn't until probably my 20s that I really just felt this urge to learn more. And I just kind of got the courage up to take courses and start looking into books and then finding out the authors and finding about courses, and just started traveling around the world. And at first I invited my friends, and of course your friends never want to go, oh yeah, that sounds fun. Oh, I'll do it later. Oh, that sounds fun. Oh, I don't have the money. And I finally thought, what am I waiting for? I'm just going to do it. And I just started booking trips and going and working with shamans and working with healers and going to energy medicine classes. And I just really got into it myself by just saying, I'm going to do this. And that's how it happened.
Awesome. Yeah, it's such an interesting thing how you get all these people that want to come on these trips with you. And there's so many times in my life where I've waited, and then I haven't gone on things because I was waiting for someone. And then there's moments where you just like, I'm just going to do it. And I've spent a lot of time traveling on my own. There's a couple of friends that I've done, close friends that I've done quite a few trips with, but most of my travel has been on my own. And most of my life-changing experiences have been on my own, and or a very, very small group of people, or some people that you meet on travels, but then never meet again.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like universe brings you together with certain people. I remember taking a shaman course. Yeah, I think it was in Santa Barbara, and I wanted to take another one in Mount Shasta. And I was like, oh, the airport was so far away. I had to take this almost 2-hour drive. And I thought, I feel, I was young, and I thought, how that seems dangerous, a little scary, and to fly somewhere and then travel for 2 hours. And I was at the shaman course, and I met some friends, and there was a girl there. I said, I would like to take this course. And she said, well, me too. I said, well, let's go together. And she's like, great. And so we met at the airport. She had to fly from somewhere else. I forgot where. And we met at the airport and we rented a car, and it was a great trip. And so we drove together. We attended the class. Then we drove back to the airport together. And it was like the most perfect trip ever, And so sometimes you'll find those people that are more willing when you actually meet them at the courses.
Yeah. And the universe also, I was in Las Vegas. I was living and working in Las Vegas. I was working for the club crawls and I was studying my Czech stuff at the same time. And it was probably one of the most profound experiences because there was so much distraction in Las Vegas. Like,
oh, sure.
Everything. Shows, whatever you wanted was there in Las Vegas. And I would work and I would come home and I would study my Czech notes. And I had my scooter and I would drive to Whole Foods. I think Whole Foods isn't as good as it used to be, but back then it was okay. And I had a gym membership. And I remember, it might have been Paul, the Czech Institutes, a few of the practitioners started talking about plant medicine and ayahuasca. And I didn't really know what that was. It's like, oh, I need to get myself to South America. And I was thinking, what can I sell back in Australia so I can get myself there? And I was on an app called Couchsurfing, which is where I really liked it when I went to stay in a city for quite some time, that I could meet some locals rather than just doing all the touristing. I was on there and there was an ayahuasca event that had randomly got put up, and it was only up for maybe half an hour before they took it down because it's classified as illegal. And I saw that and I was like, I'm going to go. And in my mind, I'm like, it's going to be a rednecks, you would call them, in a garage. And I was like, as long as I go with the right intention, it'll be good. And a couch surfing guy, another random couch surfing girl, we went on little scooters, and it was in the hills of Vegas, a beautiful house that they were, a lesbian couple had let a traveling shaman have their house. And their house is beautiful. You can tell that they traveled the world. There was African statues, Christ statues, Buddhist statues, Chinese statues. They just were world travelers. And it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And yeah, this traveling shaman just came through. And I just remember talking to him. He's like, yeah, it will find you when you're ready. Yeah. And that's what I've found for me personally, is there's times in my life where I'm kind of drawn back to, say, more ceremonial plant medicine things. But then I will not need that for some time. And I will still do other practices. Maybe that be surfing or gardening or hanging with the goats, like you would know. They all bring something out in you. And one of the things I kind of wanted to chat on is because there is a big trend now in doing lots of plant medicine ceremonies, and it's kind of the extreme that everything has to be super cathartic. Like you got to be thrown up and you got to be doing all these things. And it's kind of, I remember Paul talking about like Western people took yoga and then they made it like power yoga, and
yoga.
Yeah, everything needs to be extreme. And what I've noticed is that people go on these ceremonies and then they go on another one and they go on another one. And it's like, for me, there's that ceremony all the way back then. There's still aspects of that I'm integrating.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see it. I think it's great. People are doing these things and learning more about themselves. But I can also see the dangerous side of the body maybe physically not being ready or able to handle or to integrate. Right. And I'd like to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, for sure. Most people are using it like party. It's like, oh, let's party every Friday and let's just do an ayahuasca journey and do some psychedelics. And that's true. They're not learning the information that's been given to them. So when you do a ceremony in the proper way, there's a lot of guidance, and there's a lot of aha moments in it, and you're supposed to reflect on that and apply that information to your life and not just go, oh, that was nice, let's go to the next one. And people aren't really taking that deeper step into really understanding what it is that they learned about themselves. And I think that's a little bit of self-avoidance. It's like, I want to kind of be spiritual, but I don't want to really do the work. And so that's what we see, so unfortunately we have this trend where people are just using it as a party drug and a way to escape instead of a way to connect.
Yeah. And there's that part. And then we would call, have you ever been to Byron Bay in Australia?
I'm not sure if I have. I might have been, but I'm not sure.
It would kind of be compared to like a trendy part of California where you've got everyone's a shaman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's that part as well where people will go and do, say, a ceremony or a breath work, and then they become the practitioner.
It's a one-time, yeah.
Yeah. It's like the one-hit wonder, but then they might have really great social media graphics, and they put themselves in this position of power and authority. And one of the things that I loved with going to Peru, and we were talking about the artwork behind me earlier, is the shamans there, they have this lineage. So they're the shaman, but then they can tap into the lineage of their family as well as the plant and all those type of things. And so, like, I consider myself quite intuitive and have some of those shamanistic qualities. But what I guess then gets you to be a shaman? Like truly be an embodied shaman?
That's a really good question. And a lot of people go out and they say, I'm a shaman, I'm a shaman. You'll notice that when I say anything about shamanism, I say a shamanic practitioner. And so it's okay if someone else calls me a shaman. And so when I went to my 3-year advanced training through Michael Harner's courses, if you go to shamanism.org, you can see all about the course program. Michael Harner's passed away a couple years now, but his courses are still alive and well with his instructors. And so I took a bunch of his prereq courses, and then you have to be accepted in. So they have a tribal council, and they decide who's ready for this work. So not everybody's ready to do the work that they are offering. And then you commit to 3 years of training. And you were driving up, flying up to San Francisco and taking the courses, and you'd be there for about a week, and you'd come home, and then you'd integrate, and then you'd go back. And it was this one, the courses were all without medicine. So it was just drumming. And you can use a drum beat to get you into these advanced journey states. And so it was a really profound experience. In fact, I think some of my most profound experiences were there, because if you're on a drug, you go, oh, well, it's just the drug talking. But if you're not on a drug and you're having out-of-body experiences that are full on reality, you're like, this is powerful, because I can't just say it was a drug. It was like, wow, I actually went somewhere. So after the 3-year advanced training, after we graduated, they said, you don't get a diploma to put on your wall that says you're a shaman. And the reason why, it's not up to you to decide if you're the shaman. It's up to the community. So the community decides if this person's holding the power, because power is given to you not from me, but through me, through spirits, guides, power animals. And so you have to have a relationship with those. And so they're working through me to help a person. And so if you get into your ego and you're like, oh, I'm so good, well, then those people go, it's not really you, Angie, it's us. And so if you're going to think it's you, we're out of here. And the next time you try to do the work, people go, I didn't feel anything, or I didn't notice anything. And so you have to be humble in that work. And so I do the work. I invite the guides. I've always lighted candles. So in all of my sessions, when people hire me, I do a lot of remote stuff. I always light my candle behind me. I have a little altar behind me, and connect and making sure that I'm acknowledging those that are working with me. And it's not just, hey, I'm the shaman, I've got all this power. No, it's not my power. It's being given through me to help a person. And so it's through that the person says, yeah, I see a shift in my body, or a shift in my mind, or shift in their consciousness. And that comes through the work. And so then they can say, Angie is a shaman, because it works. And that power can be taken any day. It's like you have to be humble every single day and communicate with your guides, and so that they're willing and able to work with you. And so that's the difference, is it's more of a humble thing instead of a noble thing. I'm a shaman, and people just, like you said, do one journey and now they're a shaman too. And it's like, really? And so, yes, lineage is important, but you can learn this. And sometimes we think, oh, it has to be lineage. Know about the soul. The soul lives on. So you could have been a shaman in your past life, and now you're a Caucasian male and you're thinking, well, I can't be a shaman. It's like, well, yeah, you can be because it's in your lineage from a previous lifetime. And so you might find that you don't discredit yourself and think, oh, I can't do this work. And you very well could do the work. And if there's a calling to it, then definitely explore that and work with those guys and see if that is something that you're wanting to do and you're willing to take on. But it is a humble journey. And so it's not about ego. And I'm always, when people tell me stories, I'm like, that's great. That's wonderful. But I don't post all these stories on the internet and go, look at me, I'm so amazing, because that would take away the power and it'd bring it to me and not through the work that's coming through me.
So there's a couple of things I wanted to talk on that. Like, that has been one of my personal experiences where it's like, and I think there is a lot where it's like, well, I'm lighter skinned, so my appropriating and stealing this work from these indigenous cultures. But I do believe that a lot of us are born and spread out into certain areas where people need healing and people need help. And so it's really interesting when I start talking. I've had this cough for this last kind of week, and it's because I really wanted to get this podcast out there. And that congestion of trying to keep that voice.
Okay. So no, I've been coughing hacking too in California. I think we have lots of chemtrails, which is awful. But we also have mustard. The mustard grows wild here, and it's totally taken over everything. It's terrible. And I'm allergic to it. And it's these beautiful little white flowers, and they just spread and spread and spread, and they release their pollen at nighttime. So as soon as the sun starts going down, it starts to hack on me. And I'm like, oh, and it carries on to the night. And in the morning, I usually have a little congestion and it goes away for a few hours. But I've been hacking too. And it's like March through June. And, and it's like now we're finally getting out of those months. And so it's getting better, but there's still a few, but they burn up when the sun's really hot, which we're really hot right now. So it's like, okay, that's good. But I'm right with you. So if I start hacking, we're experiencing certain things together.
Yeah. So being like a white male, and one thing I have noticed is that there's a part of me that may have abused my power in the past. And so I'm aware of that. And so I kind of go through this experience where I almost want to claim who I am and say, I do shamanic stuff. But at the same time, there's this other part of me that's like, almost don't be too in your ego. And it's kind of like this battle between, and sometimes I think I draw back a little bit too much and then I go forward. And
that's safe.
Yeah. And then I notice what kind of brings me back is when I see other people who are in that position of like power or authority that really kind of have this sense like, hey, that person really shouldn't be doing that. And as Chek practitioners, we're always taught to refer out. So when it's outside of our skill set, we refer out. And I see a lot of people who are enthusiastic, and that's awesome. But sometimes I think that they're taking on and creating almost more damage with clients than good. It's like they're opening them up, but then these people are going back into the world. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. And so it kind of goes back to the same thing as there's pseudo shaman out there, and they have enough skills to maybe facilitate, but there's also the work afterwards. True shamanic journey by a skilled shaman should actually have you through a process where there's a day of preparing and understanding and having that guidance and writing down what you're trying to seek from that journey. And then there's the journey day, and afterwards there should be of what happened. And so a lot of people don't spend the time to review, and it's just kind of like, okay, cool, that was a fun journey, see you later. And there's no integration, right? So there should be integration days. And that's really, really critical because if you said they can open someone up so fully and they might feel amazing and blissed out for a second, but then they go back in the world. It's like, how do they assimilate that? And that can be very confusing or can mess them up even more. So even when I went to mystery school, it was a really powerful, I went to a mystery school through Nine Gates, ninegates.org. And it was 12 days, and you go and you're without phone, you're with just the group, and you have these powerful experiences. And then you go back for 6 months at home, and they actually have a teacher working with you. So she would check in every week to make sure, how are you doing? Because when you go from full blown amazing experiences and they come back to your regular life and no one's on that same level, it can be very confusing or trying. It's like, I want to stay in this higher vibration, but the people around me are not in that vibration. And so it's nice to have that, hand holding if you need it to be say, what do I do next? And you don't get that when you just go to this resort and you just go for a week or, go for a day and you come back and it's like, what do I do now? So it is important to recognize that there should be a little bit of integration work so that they're not just left on their own. Yeah.
Awesome. And I also wanted to chat about biogeometry. So I've got my little pendant here.
I have mine here. I read, yeah.
So I understand it, but I don't fully grasp the depth and real magic of what biogeometry is. And it's in Australia, it's not something that's very well known, I don't think. And I'd really love for you to explain this in depth and what drew you to biogeometry. You've got shamanistic, you've got the Czech practitioner, you've got all the animals to look after. And so what was the thing that kind of, like, I've listened to Paul's podcast on the biogeometry and it was deeply fascinating. And it's on my list that I'd like to do. But what drew you into that?
So most of the things I do are intuitive based. Like I just get this gut feeling that it's right for me. And biogeometry was one of those things. I remember I was very busy. I'm usually, like you said, very busy with my farm and my kids and my business and teaching for the Institute. And Paul does lots of podcasts and I don't always follow up on them every single time because I'm so busy. But he got off the first one of the biogeometry with Dr. Ibrahim Karim and Durea, his daughter, and he was super jazzed and he wrote me an email and I happened to be in my office and he wrote to myself and Matt Walden, who's the head of the IMS program. So we have the IMS section, which is exercise physiology, and then there's the HLC when I'm the head of the HLC department, which is holistic lifestyle coaching. And so he wrote to us and says, okay, one of you guys have to take this biogeometry course. He goes, I'm so jazzed about this. I want to carry their products. You can't have their products unless someone is licensed to do so. So you have to take the course so that people understand it. So somebody in your business has to take this course. And I saw this email and that's all it really said. And the word biogeometry, you would think that would kind of be repulsive because it sounds like geometry, and geometry was very challenging for me in school. So yeah, but when I read it, something rose up in me and I got super excited. I'm like, I don't know what it is. I didn't listen to the podcast. I had no bearing, but it's just that word came to me. And I was like, I'll do it. And Paul's like, really? And he's like, wow, because I usually don't take a while to respond back to emails. And I was like, instantly, I was like, I'll take it. I'm going to do this. And because I checked my schedule and I had this opening. It was like during a time when some of my clients were on break. And I was like, I don't usually have openings in my schedule. This was like divine intervention. I must take this because there's a reason for my opening. Because I have this philosophy that in life, when I'm self-employed, and I always tell my clients and the students I teach, when you have your own business, pay attention to that flux of highs and lows in your business. And those lows aren't lows to punish you or tell you, oh, hurry up and get nervous and try to get more clients. Those are times where you develop yourself or develop more in your business and take the opportunity to grow and learn. And then when the highs come back, you're prepared for the next batch of clients. And so I felt like there was a little dip in my schedule. And so I was like, this is what that dip is for. This is what I need to do. And so I just signed up and said, okay, I'll take this course. And it was after COVID time that I was taking these courses. So everything was online. And I was like, oh, great, I'll take this course from home. This is perfect. And it was just life-changing. I remember just being laughing, tickled pink, because it was just like so exciting. Every course, every lecture they had was something that I could apply in my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love it, love it, love it. So it's one of those courses where the entire course is amazing. There wasn't just a little bit of excitement. It was like every single thing they told me was like, I love it. So much so that when I finished that foundation training, I immediately contacted the school and says, I need to take advanced training. And so I immediately signed up for the advanced training. And then I took the applied skills training. And now I'm in line to be a teacher. So I'm going to start teaching biogeometry because I love it. So what is biogeometry? Biogeometry is basically a relatively new science that's based on old Egyptian techniques. And so Dr. Karim is an architect. And so he's in his 80s now, and he's been an architect since he graduated from college. And his whole dream was to figure out why there was healing properties in the Egyptian pyramids. So he's like, why do they release that energy? What is it about their geometric design that creates this energy? And so he started to explore other sacred sites and trying to figure out what it is that there's a commonality between sacred sites all over the world. And what he discovered is that there's 3 energies that come together in these sacred sites. So we see the high harmonics of gold, and you're familiar with that. Like when you go to a church, you see those golden halos around the saints. So we see that gold is significant of a healing property. And so then he also saw there was a higher harmonic of ultraviolet. Ultraviolet light is also seen at dusk and dawn, and that's when we like sun gaze and we look into the sun, and that's the safe time to look in it, and it gives you a lot of healing energy. And there's also vertical negative green. So those 3 energies come together. We say it's BG3, biogeometry 3, the 3 colors that come together that emit resonance on our bodies, that help balance our bodies. And it works on all living things. So plants, animals, humans, everything is balanced when these energies come together. And so the science of biogeometry is harnessing these things. So Dr. Kareem has made tools that bring that energy into your environment. So you can buy a home kit, a little cube that you put on like your fireplace, and it'll emit the energy for about a 3,000 square foot home. So, it does a nice diameter around your space, and it will balance it. And so it's a great technique, especially today's day and age where there's so much Wi-Fi buzz and, 5G towers and all these things going on. You say, should we blow up the towers? Well, instead of blowing up, why don't we just harmonize them? And so Dr. Kareem's work, if you go to his website, biogeometry.com, he made this thing called a Hamburg emitter. And it was based on his work he did in Hamburg in Germany or Austria or something like that. And so basically you can point this like antenna, and it point it towards the tower. And what it will do is it'll transmit and transmute the energy to a healing vibration instead. So instead of causing cancer and buzzing your cells and irradiating you, now it's harmonizing and healing your body. And so he was offered this job in Hamburg, where the president or whoever this official was called him up and says, "Hey, I heard you have this technology where you can transmute harmful energy and make it into positive healing energy." He says, "Yeah, I do." And he says, "Well, we have these 5G towers, and they're causing a lot of problems in our community. And we've noticed that cancer rates are going up, animals are getting sick, people are having tinnitus in their ears, and all these challenges." And it happened immediately when the towers were put into place. So Dr. Kareem said, "Well, if you know what's causing the problem, then why don't you just get rid of the problem, get rid of the 5G? And of course, they're like, "Oh, yeah, well, that's technology, and they're getting paid so much money to have them and stuff." So he's like, "Can you transmute them?" And he's like, "Sure, I can." So they paid for him to go to Hamburg, and he actually made these Hamburg emitters, which is pointed at these 5G towers. And immediately after he balanced the towers, people were like, "Why you stop ringing?" And they're like, "Wow, it's amazing." And people were saying they felt better immediately. And of course, word spreads, and people, all the naysayers are like, "It was just placebo effect." And, that's, they made a big hype about it. It was all over the news, and now everybody's thinking they're better. So Dr. Kareem's like, "All right, well, I'll prove it by working on the animals and focusing on the animals, because it's not a placebo effect on animals." And so the cows were getting leukemia. And so he started applying these energies in the barns and going to the farms. And so you can do it with colors of certain colors can help. So primary colors, if something's deficient in the land, you can put these colored stakes in the property. And he did all these things to balance the energy in the coops for the chickens and in the barns and things. And within 2 weeks, the chickens or the cows that had leukemia, they would come back and they would be well within 2 weeks. They'd test their blood and go, "Where's the cancer? It's gone." And so like chickens, they were putting them on heavy doses of antibiotics. And they were saying everybody knows that a chicken can't live past 2 years old without antibiotics because they're so sick these days. And so he's like, "All right, I'll prove that you can." So he started putting these symbols and things in their coops, and they were better. And in 2 years, they're like, "Okay, well, they don't need antibiotics, but it's a 2-year mark. Let's just extend it for another year of research." He's like, "Sure." He goes, "I've already put these solutions in place. Don't just leave them up." So another year goes by. Chickens are fine. No need for antibiotics. "Well, maybe we should try another year." He's like, "Try it as long as you want." And so people are realizing, wow, it's actually working. And so he was working on animals all over the world to prove that this technology works. In fact, he started also working at the universities. And there was one study, and I believe you can find it on his website, where I think it was in Egypt, And it was in the newspaper. It says, hey, we're doing a study, and I believe it's on leukemia as well. So it can be on any cancer. And they said, if you have an herb or nutrients like vitamins, minerals, or supplementation that you know that helps people, we'd like to test it along with this drug. So the primary test was for this medical drug that just came out, and they wanted to compare it to everything else that was on the market. And so Dr. Kareem applies, and he says, well, I have these signatures. And he's like, well, how do we give that to administer that to the patient? So Dr. Kareem thought, okay, well, I'll make a little patch, like a sticker patch that they can wear on their arm. And so that's what he did. And so there was like 200 people in the study that he put these patches on, and like 85% of them got better. And that was like way outperforming the medical drug. And they're like, what in the world? They were just scratching their head. And so they canceled the study. And so instead of going further, and so people were like, we would like to see the study. And like, no, because it was funded by the pharmaceutical, and they didn't want to have some simple solution like that. They wanted to have a drug that people took and they could capitalize on. And so that's where some of his research came out, that it was so powerful that people were getting better immediately. And so that just drew my attention, because as a nutritionist and holistic lifestyle coach, I'm always finding ways to improve people's lives. And so obviously we want to work on the foundation principles, thinking right, breathing right, moving right, eating right, drinking right, sleeping right, but also giving the support so they can see the body healing and getting better. Because when you feel like crap, it's really hard to change your lifestyle. And so biogeometry is that introduction way where you can say, okay, we're going to get the body feeling better, but now let's take care of you as well. And so there, so it's a nice, marriage between coaching and, hey, let's do this. And it's beautiful, because once you have the signatures, it's free. You don't have to buy something. You just draw these signatures on your body, or I make these papery knitters with a picture of a person. And yeah, and
one that you made me over there, I'm looking at it. It's right there. Looks beautiful.
Yeah, and I have some over here, and I have a file of them here, and I usually, I do anywhere from 20 to 30 a week. I work on people, I work on animals, I'm working on my chicken, I work on my pigs, I work on my goats. Fabulous, because especially for like animals where they can't talk and tell you what's wrong, you can use biogeometry to figure out what's wrong with them. Like the other day, my pig, I have a very old 13-year-old pig, pot-bellied pig. I don't know if you know the story, but I adopted him, and he was extremely arthritic, and he had a really bad coat. He was probably one of the ugliest pigs I've ever seen. And I'm like, why am I adopting this? But something in me was like, I need this pig. So I took over this pig, and he had such bad arthritis. He walked on his wrist right here, and there was bald patches on his wrist, and he would just walk, and he was in just horrible pain. And so I changed his diet, as a nutritionist would, found out he was eating a lot of wheat, and wheat's very hard on arthritic people. So people, animals are alike. So I took him off his wheat products. I gave him more organic vegetables, and I switched it to now he eats peas, and he'll eat a little alfalfa, and then strictly fresh organic vegetables. And he's like a different pig, because I applied biogeometry signatures to him. So I made a little emitter. And so the other day, I worked on him again. So now he's walking, his coat's shining and beautiful, and he's just like a brand new pig. And he's 13 years old, and you would think he was maybe 7. He's just full of himself. But the other day he was laying on the ground, and I'm like, what's the matter? And he was just and he wasn't eating his food. So I'm like, oh, okay, let's figure this out. So I looked, and you can get their personal wavelength through a picture of your animal. And I just figured out that his stomach was having a little bit of a sour stomach. And I'm like, he was in the chicken coop today, and he was probably eating that grain, which his body didn't like. And so I just applied the signatures to help his stomach heal. And the next day he was back to normal again, his happy self, and eating and everything. So it works on many beautiful ways where you can, help an injured animal recover. And it was so profound that when I didn't buy him, when I adopted this pig, when I got him, the farm that I got him from says, here's the list of people that work with him, like his vet and the lady who cut his hooves. And so they said every 6 months you should have his hooves trimmed. I said, okay. So after 6 months of owning him, I called this lady up and said, can you come over and clean up his hooves? And she's like, yeah, sure. She shows up, and now she's worked on him all his life. Her jaw just drops, and she's like, what kind of, whose pig is this? Is this the same pig? Because she's like, this is not the same pig. She's like, unbelievable, because she was last time I worked on him, he was like on his deathbed. He was hardly moving, and he was frail, and now he's running around. So that's really fun to see when an animal is thriving when it was going to die, and powerful stuff. I think I told you another one fun story that I love is my goat story. I'm a new goat owner, and all because of you. talked me into getting goats. And so I bought those 2 goats, and one of them was pregnant. And I took all those courses you suggested, and I was real nervous. Because, okay, this is my first time being a midwife for a goat. And so I was with her all day, and her labor started about 5 o'clock, and she was, in pain, and she's pushing on her jaw against the wall and her head. And I was like, okay, now it's 9 o'clock at night. So I'll be watching her for 4 hours. I'm like, how long is this going to go on? And I think you suggested, well, maybe give her some time by herself, and let's see. Sometimes they do better when they're alone. Just keep the monitor on her. So I came into the house at 9 o'clock, and I thought, biogeometry. So I tested her body I use anatomy charts, and I checked her uterus. And of course, she had some challenges in her uterus. So I'm like, oh, yes, support her uterus. Obviously, there's going to be some stress in the uterus while you're giving birth. And so I thought, well, when is she going to give birth? And so I thought, well, I know when she'll give birth, when I heard she needs the signatures for her vagina, because that's going to be a lot of pain. So with biogeometry, you can also project into the future. So I was like, okay, what signatures she need at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock. So I was focusing on the vagina signature, and I'm like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. At 12 o'clock, it says she needed that signature. I'm like, she's going to give birth at midnight. I'm like, well, I'm going to lay on the sofa with my monitor and get a little rest, because I'm going to be up all night. And sure enough, 11:58, she starts to scream. I run out there, and the babies were born at 12:02. I think one was 11:58, 12:02, and 12:03 or something like that. And so it was amazing. It was right at 12 o'clock. And so my biogeometry allowed me to know when that goat was having her babies.
That's awesome. The amount of hours I've slept with the goats before, because I thought that they were going to give birth that night, and it didn't. I thought it was going to give birth that night, and it didn't give birth to the following night. So
Exhausted.
By that time, it was like a whole day just waiting for this goat to be born. And it was because I'd lost some goats previously to it. And so I was like, there's no way this is happening again. But yeah.
Next time you have a goat in labor, let me know, and I'll do some biogeometry. We'll figure out the time.
Well, we've got 28 does giving birth pretty soon.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's going to...
Do you have 28 people in case they go to birth the same night?
No, we have spaced it out a little bit. I have once where my friend was away, and there was 2 goats kidding at exactly the same time. One was giving birth, and the other, and I was like, "You wait, okay, you go." And then she kidded one, and then she kidded one, and then I came back and she kidded one.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so that was a stressful time running around. And one of them kidded standing up, because she just didn't like being. She was one of the goats that didn't like human touch as much, and so she was a bit worried about if she lied down, like I'd come and pat her. So that was really interesting. Yeah, so obviously we bonded over the goats. We're on the Zoom, and we're latching. And then eventually they all latched, and they were all good. But yeah, goats has been a really interesting experience for me, as well as being great for my health with the raw goat's milk. And I was reading this book again last night. I know they talk a lot about the traditional diets and raw milk in the diet. And there was one section I was reading last night, which was about how the nutrition and as we have the generations, how quickly, and it kind of goes on to the pig story, is how quickly when we start feeding people right and giving them the right environment, so using things like biogeometry and other tools to support how quickly we can heal, but also at the same time, how quickly we can degenerate as a species. And I found it so fascinating reading about that last night, and how they had photos of the kids. And so it's like these 3 kids were born on the traditional diet, and then they moved, and this kid was born, and the complete change in facial structure, teeth, deformities. And this book was 100 years ago. And our diet is not better for majority of people, is not better, and the access to what we call as Chek practitioners non-foods is mind-blowing. So
Yeah, and so your audience can also check to see how well their parents' diet was when they were giving birth to them. So how good the sperm was and how good your mother's diet was when you're pregnant by doing the rule of thirds. And so that's where you take your hand and put your thumb close to your hand, and then you put on your chin and you move your hand upwards. So your thumb's close to your other fingers, and it should touch the bottom of your nose. Okay, and then you take your thumb, you put it underneath your nose, and you swivel up, and it should be right between your eyebrows. And so most people have a short middle third. So yours is a little bit short. And then you go from forehead to the top of your head, and it should be where your hair is, or where your hair should have been if you have a receding hairline. And so your face, when it's balanced, will be the rule of thirds. So 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And we're seeing that with processed foods, excess sugar, these things that are not supposed to be in our diet, it will change the structure of face. So we're seeing the crowding of the teeth and the shortening of that middle third, which causes a lot of nasal passage problems. People can't breathe through their nose. So now you have a lot of mouth breathers. You see all these people who need braces now because their teeth are not naturally straight, which they should be. And so that's all because it's damaging the DNA. And so back when that book was written, they didn't know what it was DNA, so they called it germ spore injury. So it's germ spore, but that's what was happening. And so you can test yourself, and if you do find you have a short middle third, you can't change that. That's your DNA has been altered in such a way. However, if you're of childbearing years, if you choose to eat healthier before giving birth, then your child's offspring will have a better DNA. And so the analogy I like to give is like a printer with the ink toner that's going out. You're enhancing your ink, and so that the copy is going to be stronger than your copy. And so the DNA is now becoming healthier. And so you'll find that your children's facial structure will be a little bit more balanced. And it takes up to 4 generations to heal those imbalances.
Sorry, we'll edit that bit out, the coughing spree. But it's something that I've been really, because I'm now close to 40 and I don't have kids yet, and I want to have kids, and I'm not in a relationship at the moment. But like when I'm looking for my future partner, it's almost like they need to read this before, because we really need to know that, hey, and we want to have kids, we've got to do the work, a little bit of work first. Let's really get our nutrition and make sure that we are primed and ready to give these future offspring an opportunity greater than what we have.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And so I find the challenge is when we start finding a narrowing of the middle third and we see degeneration in the body, well, then we also say sick body, sick mind. So it's harder to apply new principles because you don't have the capacity to think that well, so it's like, oh, I just eat Doritos, or I just eat this processed food, or I just eat fast food. And so trying to educate someone and they have to really, it's a challenge, and the sicker they are, the more likely they're going to say, are you kidding me? I'm not going to get rid of my fast food or this favorite crap I'm eating. And so they really have to apply themselves. And that's where the challenge comes, because if you're healthy, then you have healthy thoughts and you choose healthy foods. But it's really challenging when you're not healthy, because even your taste buds change. When you're eating a lot of cytotoxins, they excite the salivary glands. And so now when you're eating like Skittles, I don't know if you have Skittles there in Australia, but like sweet candies that are artificially flavored, it heightens your taste buds. And so when you eat like a fruit, this tastes bland. It doesn't have that same sensation. And so it takes a while for you to bring your taste bud sensation back down to a normal level so that fruit tastes sweet again, because they're used to super sweet. And so, and you'll find kids that, back in the day, or like in the States, used to say that they would ban any food item that was more than 12 grams of sugar per serving, because there's too much sugar for the human body. But over time, sugar became so used everywhere that we forgot that it's like a class 1 medical drug. If it was, it was found today, they would say, oh my gosh, this is so addictive, we're not going to put it in our food supply. But it's in everything. So, if you had like, marinara sauce and you're going to make your kids some spaghetti. Well, it's like, if you had 12 grams of sugar, that tastes good. But if the next guy made 15 grams of sugar per serving, the kids go, yum, this tomato sauce is better. And that sells more. So it was cheap. It's like, there's a little extra sugar, a lot of sugar. Now you're seeing things with 28 grams of sugar, 40 grams of sugar. And it's like now we're addicted to sugar. So it's hard to get out of that lifestyle because everything has sugar in it. Salad dressing has sugar in it. It's like, well, all these things that are healthy even contain sugar because we love sweet. And so
And
it's
they
hard.
hide it as well. There's different types of sugar, and then you got corn syrup,
Yeah.
all that type of nasty stuff. And on top of that, sure, fruit is very bland. It's not organically grown, so you eat an
Yeah.
organic apple compared to one from a supermarket, and the taste difference. So you've got someone in the supermarket eating an apple, and then they've got some apple flavored, nonsense full of sugar. This is going to be 1,000 times better. But if you then take that person and an organic apple, they would notice that. I would say, but it's like we all know. You guys call it the SAD, the standard American diet, but SAD still works in Australia, the standard Australian diet, and it's we are in Australia almost as bad as you guys, if not worse, in a lot of areas with the obesity and the degeneration. And then I've also seen, because I've traveled such a long time, so many different countries, a long time, and things like that. And I've been in the most remote areas, around the world, and Coca-Cola is still there. It makes it, so the Western diet, and you can see in places like Philippines where vegetable oil is everywhere, but they've got coconuts. They're everywhere, and but the Western, it's infiltrated, and there's so much obesity and diabetes and all these type of things, and a lot of it is simple foods or non-foods that have been pushed into the diet and created cheap, and the entire system, we know it's designed to keep people sick and unwell because more easily controlled. If we start to think outside the box and we actually have ideas, we can create solutions really quick as a society, which is kind of exciting now because it's all happening all at once. All these things that have been suppressed for so long are coming out, and everything's shifting. And so it is a really exciting time to be alive. But as health practitioners, when people come to us, I remember when I first went to Czech Practitioner in Australia. So I had no idea what Czech Institute was, and this was, 15 years ago or whatever. And I had the pneumonia and the glandular fever, and I'd been on antibiotics, but I was still drinking and partying, and I just was like, I'm just getting worse and worse. And my friend, who had seen a Czech practitioner for his shoulder, says, "Oh, I think you should go see this guy." And so I went and saw, his name's Rhett. And I went and saw Rhett. My program was get a water filter, go to the organic farmers markets, eat more good quality fat, butter, coconut oil, saturated fat, and from organic meat, and pretty much rest. Like that was my program. And I remember doing my food log where I gave it to him, and I was like, yeah, I ate pretty healthy. And it was my whole wheat bread, like my sandwiches, my Barocca for my vitamins. I don't know if you guys have Barocca over there. It's one of those things that you put in the water and it fizzes up. What else did I have in there? My wheat bix. You might call them Vitabits, but but they're literally, there's more nutrition in the probably cardboard box than the actual.
Right.
It's wheat that's been stored for however many, I don't even know how many years it's been before it even get into the box, and then it's been sitting in the box for months and months and months, if not years. And I truly thought I was eating a healthy diet because I was eating pretty much the food pyramid, which is a lot of grain and not that much butter and things like that. And just slowly integrating that. So I would still go out on the Saturday night and party, but then on the Sunday morning I would go to the organic farmers markets and I'd be hungover. And eventually it got to the point where sometimes I'd go and I wouldn't be hungover. And then sometimes I'd bring some of my friends, and sometimes we were hungover, sometimes we weren't. And then eventually it got to the point where I wouldn't go out on the Saturday night and I'd be at the organic market. And slowly over the time, I just started to, it wasn't slowly, I just started to feel better and almost value myself more. And, that was a really interesting experience of the two contrasting worlds, where all my friends, and this kind of goes on what you were talking about, where it is hard to make change when you're addicted to certain things. So that was my circle. Everyone worked for the club crawls. We all went out partying. We'd have kebabs and pizza, and our circadian rhythm was completely out. And that's all I knew. And so to go into that, it was hard because every time I was hanging out by myself and people thought I was weird and I was called Organic Nick and all these type of things. And it's me eating my organic food, and they're like, how much did you pay for that? I'm like, no, it's really good. But eventually some other people started to kind of come with me on this experience. And a lot of them, like I know some of them have even given home births. People that I work with, the pub crawls, have now given home births. And it's such an interesting experience that it takes one person to change things for the positive or the negative. And really anyone that's listening, it's not easy, but it's worth it. And people like you and me can be guides on the way, and because we've experienced certain things and life experiences. I wanted to shift into talking about a bit more about your skills. Like you talked about being able to see dead people, and what other intuitive skill sets do you have? Because one thing that I've noticed is there's a lot of people that have these abilities that it's a bit scary for them, and they kind of want to keep them down, but it's not able to be suppressed anymore. And so it's all coming to the surface, and it's not something they can generally go and talk to their friends about. Oh, like, how are you? Yeah, good. You're dead. Whoever's sitting beside you, you can't speak because you'll lose your friendship circle down, and makes it even more difficult. So how did you go about that, and what suggestions do you have for people that are experiencing this? Because it is part of who they are, and that is what the world needs.
No, I'm the personality type where I just shared things like that. I'm not one to really care what people think. It's just like, hey, this is what's going on. And you find that when you share, you'll find people that are just like you. But if you're living in a lie or living a story, then you're going to find people living a lie and living a story. So when you start becoming authentic, you surround yourself with authentic people. And so when I speak my truth, I find people that are speaking their truth. And so that's the beauty. It's just, sometimes you might be scared, you might lose some friends because they think you're weird, but then you find friends that are more like you. And so, then it actually feels better too, because you might have friends, these are my friends, but there's not that close connection because you're like, I can't talk about these deep things that I'm experiencing because they're different vibrational energies, and so as you raise your vibration, you'll meet people that are willing to connect at a deeper level. So, for me, I just started seeing things, and I wasn't afraid to just say, hey, this is really trippy, and then I'd start asking questions because of this person here, it looks like this. Do you know someone that looks like this? Oh my gosh, that's my uncle with something. And so I would learn about it and just not be afraid to just start talking about it. I had a lot of experience that I'm writing about. I'm writing a 4-volume book series right now. And the second volume is all on death and dying. It's all about my experiences about how I started learning about this gift and connecting to it. And it really helped me in my life because I, as a human being, or I think anybody who's thinking about life and death, there's that fear of what happens when we die. We read stuff, we see movies, and we're really not sure. And so we might live our life in fear that something really bad's going to happen if we live our life a certain way. And there's all these ideas that we're told through our religions or the community about what death is like. And so being open and being able to talk to people on the other side, well, then you start realizing, well, this is way different than most people are sharing. It's not, this, heaven and hell situation at all. And so what happened to me is I was married to my first husband, and he had a lot of relatives in their 90s. And so they were 80s when I first was together with him. I was with him for 12 years. And then as these older relatives were approaching 90, they started to pass on. And what happened is we'd be at the hospital, or we'd be at the hospice hospital, and be with them as they were getting closer to death. And I started seeing things, and I'm like, whoa. And of course, I didn't know these people all their life, so I didn't know much about their life. But when I would start explaining to my ex, I'm like, oh, there's this person, and I would describe it. He's like, oh, that's the sister, or oh, that's their husband, or that's. And so it was really fascinating to me because I didn't know these people, and so I was just describing what they were showing up as. And I got a glimpse of what happens when we die. And so when we die, typically your loved ones come back to bring you on. So they start showing up at your deathbed. And sometimes you'll have elderly people, and they're like, oh, I just saw my, sister or something. And they're like, well, your sister's been dead for 20 years. I'm like, yeah, she came to visit me, and you're like, she's crazy. But no, that's that transition, and they're starting to seeing that, and that gives them comfort with that transition, because now they're feeling safe because those relatives or family members or friends come back to meet them. And that's a beautiful thing. And so that's how I started to experience this life after death and started talking about it, and who was showing up, and that gave a lot of comfort and support to people who were with their relatives on their deathbed, because they weren't alone. Sometimes like, I can't leave my loved one because I don't want them to die alone. Well, they're probably not dying alone. They're not maybe dying with humans that are alive, but they're going to be dying with humans that have passed on, that are there holding their hand and bringing them to the next dimension. And so that's a beautiful thing. And so for someone who's, got these gifts, find people like you, join courses. I did a lot of shamanic things. I did energy medicine courses. I just found these esoteric schools that would support me in my gifts instead of hindering me. There's a guy named Dr. Robert Gilbert. He's with Biogeometry. He's one of the first teachers besides Dr. Kareem. That was the first, he brought on a teacher, and it's Dr. Robert Gilbert, and he's got a big old episode on Gaia TV. He does a series on Gaia, and he owns the Vesica Institute, and he has a bunch of these courses for esoteric science. And his philosophy is, most schools make you go through a process. You have to start here, and then take this, and then take this, and take this. And he feels that people have their own gifts, and they show up at different levels. And so he offers up all his curriculum to anybody. So you don't have to wait 4 years or wait a certain time to be initiated to a higher level. He allows you to take all these different courses. So whatever gravitates you to, you're like, I need to learn about that, you can take that course. And I think that's amazing. Well, for people to have that opportunity and he's a wealth of information. He's done a lot of studying and he's worked in a lot of different esoteric sciences and, just metaphysical worlds. And he's got a firm grasp on a lot of these concepts. And so from meditation to, connection to biogeometry, energy science, he's amazing. So you find people like that who have websites, who can offer courses to people so that they don't feel low. Because then you're going to be in a course with students that are just like you. And then you're like, I found my family, and that's going to be supportive. And that's what I did, is just start hanging around people like me so that I'm not like the odd one, and that helps. I don't mind being the odd one, but some people do. And I'm like, in fact, I always tell, like, as a Chek practitioner, we talk about it's a marriage between the woo-woo and, so the spiritual and the practical. We do both. We have scientific knowledge as well as these metaphysical knowledge. And it's really a marriage of the two. So if someone's just one-sided, they're going to miss the boat. You can't just be only science and reading blood work. You have to be able to be intuitive and feeling what's happening at those deeper levels. And what's the body-mind themes? What's going on with the chakras? What are they holding on to? What is their mental, emotional state like that could be influencing a disease? And so all those things are a marriage between us. In my practice, I've always had my own business. I've just owned my business, since over 24 years now. And my clients have always been very supportive of all the classes I take. So when I took a course, I'd be like, I learned how to do this. They're like, oh, try it on me, try it on me. So I've always had an audience. So I immediately started applying it on bodies and trying different techniques. And so I quickly started to master these things because I wasn't afraid to try. And that's the thing, is just be brave enough to explore and try and do and work on people, as many people as you can.
I'll tell you an experience I had with a client. And she was a client that I would do pretty much everything through, like, holistically. So I taught her how to make broth, and I taught her exercise, and did some body work on her. And one time, like, I'd pretty much go to her and go, "What do you feel like today?" And she would, and this one time, she's like, "I just need some type of body work." And I said, "Can I just do this intuitively?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she lied on the thing, on the table, and had some crystals and I think I had a little Buddha statue. I had all these like random things, and I kind of put things certain places around the room and on her, and put my hands over certain different areas of her body, mood, and kind of felt like I was like, I think I'm healing her, but I don't know. And at the end of the session, I was, how was it? And I was expecting them to say something like, well, you didn't even do anything. She's like, that was amazing. And I was like, yes. So sometimes just backing yourself as well. And this is where this kind of left brain of being so structured and everything has to be shaman certificate on the wall type thing.
Right.
It is that no shamans in the villages have a shaman certificate on the wall.
Right.
It's just not a thing. This is a Western thing that we need, that validation.
Right.
But so many people do have these skills, and one of the things I work with people, because it's been my own challenge, is confidence. Is you just got to put yourself out there, and sometimes, yeah, there will be that circle that you're in isn't quite right, and you start to show aspects of who you are, and they'll judge you, or they'll laugh at you, or they'll put you down, or things like that. And then that's a choice. You choose to stay in that circle where you never truly get to be yourself, or you start to explore and, as you said, go on courses, or there's always events popping up on social media, all these type of things, and each one can kind of lead you to the next one and lead you to the next one. And, you might go, I've been to things that's like, that's not for me. And that was a great reference point. And then I've been other things where I've been completely blown away, and it's completely shifted my entire life. And it is about really, I think, owning that we came here for this individual and this unique experience. And when we stick to what's not our truth and try to fit in, like, life just isn't as exciting. And it gets to a point where I think it's one of the major leaders of depression and anxiety is people it's like they're just constantly bullshitting themselves. And eventually the body just starts giving them symptoms saying, we've got to change this. And it's why us Czech practitioners are so well sought after, is because people have been to so many people and they're very linear in their way of thinking, and then they come to someone like us, and our programs and it's so unknown, because although the principles are very grounded and similar, the lifestyle principles, we can teach people to do something that, just by giving them permission to do something that they didn't think they were allowed to do.
Right.
And they're like, what? I'm allowed to do that? It's like, yeah, it's your life. You create this story. You're the driver, not the passenger. And that's what I love about the whole holistic thing, and keeping esoteric metaphysical part in who we are, and not having it as separate.
Right. I have a saying, I always say, be you, everybody else has already been taken.
Yeah.
And so we recognize we're trying to be somebody else, or emulating somebody we saw in the internet or the movies or something, and that's destroying who we truly are. And so if we just get back to what our essence is, and you just share that truth, that's the beauty, because we don't need clones of everybody. We need original people walking around sharing their truth.
Yeah, and it's you're kind of witnessing it now, where people's lives are starting to fall apart because so many people were clones, and people are now in this space of trying to figure out, well, everything I thought I knew about myself was actually not who I am. And that can be quite a scary experience. Right now, though, there is a lot more teachers and people to help, so that does make it easier. But at the same time, if you fully identified as this person, and that's who you think you are, and you've built your entire life around that, and that comes crumbling down, and it can come very quickly. It is quite, it could be you're just walking around one day and then you start seeing people that have passed away. Your entire life would then, if you've been suppressing that and now you see that, you would think you're having a mental breakdown, but you're actually having well, I don't even know what you would call it. An awakening is the kind of trendy word. Are you seeing more and more people kind of hitting that crisis point? Like, I've kind of noticed when I speak to people, it's like their nervous system is on edge.
Yeah, I would say so. And maybe just the vibrational energy I'm putting out in the world. Many years ago, I was a personal trainer and I worked physically on the body. And then that was what I was working on. Then it was like, okay, I'm a nutritionist. Now I'm working on the nutritional aspect of the body and the physical body. And over time, it's evolved to more of a spiritual level. And so I'm now working with people so my typical week, I'll say like, okay, I'm doing so many biogeometry sessions. I'm doing all these past life regressions. So looking at your past lives, I do, typically 2 or 3 of those a week. And then soul retrievals. Soul retrievals is another thing I do readily. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. So I'm not doing a lot of physical work with the human body, though I do some of that still. So that's a skill I always have. And so someone might need to see me and do a physical assessment and do physical exercises. But I'm finding so many people need work at the spiritual level. And so if you can work at the spiritual level, it will, that's like the most powerful level of all. It's like the physical level's down here. You got physical, mental, emotional, and then spiritual. So if you can hit them that level, that does a lot more healing. And so that's why I feel like I'm at that level. I think people need that level now because they've tried all this stuff. I went to a doctor, I went to this, I went to a therapist, I went to a nutritionist, I went to this, and nothing seems to work. And so it's like, all right, let's work at a much deeper level and then look at the main issues. What's the theme that's going on that's creating the dis-ease in your body? And so my work has now changed, and so it's evolved as I've evolved.
And I had that for me as well. Like I've always, like I love what we learn in the Chek Institute so we can understand the body and the physical aspect. But that's what I always found so fascinating about it is like looking at Paul. I was like, he can out deadlift me. And he's also talking about emotions and he's talking about spirituality and because it comes from a very embodied person, and that's a lot of us Chek practitioners are, we don't try to escape into, and that's one thing that I find if you go to a lot of like spiritual conventions, a lot of people are overweight and they're not really in their body. They're kind of, it's freer up here.
Yes.
They've expanded and then they've forgot, oh wait, I'm supposed to come back into the body. And that I guess that would be the soul fragmentation aspect of it. And that's what I love is, bringing people back into the body and almost letting them know that your body is safe. Earth is safe. It's really, you're allowed to be here and you're wanted here and you're needed here, and helping them to come back into this. So the story is the furthest journey is from your head to your heart, but coming back actually into the body and realizing that you are spirit in a physical form, and we're here to utilize this advanced piece of technology, which is a human body, and own that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think people are ready for this work. I think that's why people gravitate to psychedelics and things. They're looking for a spiritual solution, so a lot of people are looking for deeper answers or different modalities because they've tried other things and they're like, and realizing, I think some people are realizing that separation between their mind and their body or their heart and that deeper connection. And I think that people are craving something deeper now. They're like, okay, life seems so monotonous without the joys of understanding the magic behind our lives. And that's what my book series is about. It's an inspirational memoir about my life and how all these events happened. And even the bad things are actually eventually good things because you learn from those experiences and that helps you grow. And so looking back at your life, instead of saying, oh, God was punishing me or these horrible things happened to me, recognizing there was a reason for those events that would make you grow in such a way that you could become who you came here to be. But if we deny that by saying, I refuse to believe that and I'm just a victim, well, then you stay in victimhood and you never grow and evolve into that person. And so my book is designed to inspire people to look at their lives deeper and recognize the magic behind every event in their life. And so sometimes we pick and choose and go, oh, only these really beautiful moments are the ones I want to remember. But it's like, we have to remember those bad moments because that's what made us stronger. That's what helped us grow. That encouraged us to move in a different direction. And even as Paul likes to talk about the pain teacher comes in and you start having pain in the body because it's saying, hey, you can't do that anymore. Time to move on. And it's kind of like the pain teacher starts to knock and then knock and louder until you finally shift and say, I can't do that. Sometimes it takes the automobile accident, you get hit by a car or something and you go, okay, I have to definitely change my ways. And so if someone's listening going, yeah, I'm sick and I'm tired all the time. Well, that's the universe saying, you're going in the wrong direction. You're trying to do something you're not supposed to do anymore. And so you need to evolve and say, what's my next life mission? Work a job. We always learn for any job we choose. And then there's a time where we fulfill that meaning, that lesson. And now it's time to grow into the next level and go into that next level. And so continue to grow and evolve and move into those higher vibrations.
Yeah, and so your book is called Shamanite?
Shamanite, yes.
Yeah, and there's Shaman Dynamite book.
Yeah, it's a Shaman Dynamite, and it's like, also like precious stones, we think of like, the ITE is a stone, you'll see like Shanghai or something. And so it's kind of also a play on words because my mom is from Mexico, and so I have this Latina background. And, in Spanish, we say ita or ito, which is like little, so shamanite is kind of like the little shaman. Instead of saying shamanita, I guess it's shamanite. So it's kind of a play on words, but yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then it's kind of what you were just discussing when we talk about the pain teacher. And sometimes people, they're physical pain, but when people have things like depression, it's the body is going into deep rest. It's letting you, it's physically stopping you. Hey, you can't go this. And so when you're depressed, you rest more, you sleep more, you don't go out as much. And so you are starting to learn more about yourself and be with your thoughts. And it is a challenging time as someone who's had depression. But when you are in that space and your body is giving you those symptoms, it is that clear something's not working. Let's rest the body. Let's heal the body. Let's actually change path. And when I look back and as you and many people that have had experiences that can, in the time, are painful and you just like, oh, this is the worst experience ever. Looking back on it, like, wow, that was such a grand experience that made me who I am, that taught me so many lessons, and I'm actually really grateful for it. At the time, worst thing ever. Now, extremely grateful for it. And so anyone that is going through these experiences, it's a guide, but you're off track a little bit. And so to come back on track and to find who you are, then what starts to happen is these symptoms start to dissipate because now you're being more truthful to who you are. And so things like depression and things like anxiety, because, you'll start eating better, you'll start surrounding yourself with better people, you'll start sleeping back into the correct circadian rhythms and all these things. And people think you can spiral out of control and into depression really quickly, but you can also spiral up really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going to see someone like you and you could have a session that could, that whatever that trauma is, and it could be shifted and changed quite quickly.
Yeah, 100%. And that usually is what happens. It's like we'll go in and I'll get them to see an event in their life and see it in a different way that just completely changes them. And like, oh my goodness, like this is what I need to see. Because, and you think about your life, some of the traumatic events that happen in the first 12 years of your life, you think how young you are and how you're perceiving the world. And so, and when you get older and you become an adult, you see the world a lot different. And when you go back and revisit those moments, you go, oh my goodness, now I can see it through the adult eyes and see what really went on, and versus my child eyes that, was trying to understand maybe a very event that was beyond their years. And so that creates more trauma. And so going back and revisiting it and seeing it a different way can be very healing.
Awesome.
What you talked about, this self-reflection, where we have to reflect on our lives. And so that's one of the Chek steps. We have a 10-step system in the Chek Institute. And that's step number 8. And it's all about self-reflection. So we talk about, the first step is having the dream and knowing what you want to do in life. And as you move through the steps of how to acknowledge that and how to get that dream to come to fruition, the step 8 is, hey, well, now I need to self-reflect and see where my life is like. What's working, what's not working. What needs to change? What do I need to let go of so that I can hold something else? And that's really important, because without self-reflection, we just keep on doing the same thing over and over and over again. So it's necessary to stop and go, hey, it's like I talk about being a public speaker. I love public speaking. And when I first became a public speaker, I wasn't the best public speaker. I used to speak really, really fast and, I get really excited and I had to slow down. And it was through experience. So, but what happened is I would do a presentation somewhere and I would self-reflect. Well, how did that go? Oh, what do I need to do different? What stories that worked? What stories didn't work? How can I say that in a way that's more understandable? And over time, I developed a skill of public speaking. So it didn't come just, I loved it, but I wasn't a natural at it. It was more of I want to do this, but it was through self-reflection that I could now talk to any audience and share a story without getting in the way of myself, for as an example.
And it is good to challenge ourselves and, be excited about something, but also be humble enough to know, hey, well, there is some improvement. And improvement doesn't mean that you're bad or you're wrong or that you're not good enough. And that's a lot of the story that people have is, oh, well, I'm not the best, so I just won't even start. And no athlete, no one was just born the best. Even the best athletes in the world all have coaches, and they're constantly practicing and improving and looking at, where they're not the best. And when we acknowledge that it's actually exciting to not be good at something, oh wow, I'm really interested in that, and I'm terrible at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I suck at it. It's sort of like I'm looking at my guitar again now, and I enjoy playing it. And sometimes I get into having a little tantrums because I'm not that good at it. But it's something I enjoy. And there's things like, with the goats, when you first start with goats, like you got no idea what you're doing, kind of, and you're learning, and you're like, this is exciting, but I don't know what to do, and you're not supposed to be doing that, but you are, and the goats will teach you these lessons, like especially around fencing. I want you in there, but now you're not. You're over there. How do you? And then you got to walk along the fence line, and there'll be one gap that the goat's got under, and you can be like, oh well, I failed, or you could be in the process of learning. And for us that are we're constantly learning, and it's exciting when you are in that process, because then life isn't just, well, that's it. Your identity then isn't just lying this, because there is always something. If it grasps your attention, or like with biogeometry, where your every essence of who you are was like, this is the thing, this is my new thing that I want to learn. Because you have allowed yourself to live a life where you can follow that path, you didn't question it. Whereas many people do, and oh well, I can't afford that, or I can't do that because of this, or
Or even like with the biogeometry, you use a pendulum, and a lot of people say, I can't use a pendulum, and so I always say, your ego's there to make sure you're always right. So if you tell yourself, I can't use a pendulum, then you'll never be able to use one.
Yeah.
And if you say, oh, I'm in the process of learning how to use one, then you'll see results. And eventually you'll go, I can use this, and you'll get great results. And so now, like, my pendulums are my best friends. I test everything. In fact, my whole household has me. I have a biogeometry pendulum in the kitchen. And so if we have food in the fridge and we're not sure if it's good or not, instead of just opening it up and smelling it, they go, Angie, get your pendulum out. And I can point to the foods and see if it's still good. And I love that. It's like you can test it, and then when you open up the jar, you're like, yeah, it was bad, and you can smell it. And so I love my biogeometry, because it's just, you can use it. But that was a skill I had to learn, to the point now where if I had to bet my life on it, I would, if I had to test a food to see if it was safe, and I was foraging out in the forest and I found wild mushrooms or something, I would know 100% if it said yes, I could eat that, because I trust it, because I use it as a daily skill. But it didn't start that way. I would have never done that 4 years ago. I would have been scared to death. Like you said, practice and using it and applying it, you become more and more confident, and you become better and better. And now I 100% trust my biogeometry, and I use that as a life skill. So I test food, I test all sorts of things, and it's just amazing, because you get those answers, and that connects you at a deeper level than just looking at things and going, oh, yes or no, or I'm not sure. Now you have a guidance system. You can use a pendulum for guidance. I started when I was living in Vegas and studying with Chek. That's when I started testing my food. So I'd be in Whole Foods and I'd hold the food, and if I leant, this is when I started listening to my body. If I leant forward, it was good. If it went back, and I just remember, like, I could imagine people looking at me like, what the hell is this guy doing? Yeah, you're like, whoa. Yeah. But now it's almost like my body can, just by holding it, I don't need to rock forward. I know that feeling. It's subtle. You don't have the whole body moving, but you feel that subtle shift forward or away from it. Yeah, sometimes I'll be in a grocery store and maybe 2 organic items, and you grab them in your hands, and I'll be reading the labels, but to people think I'm just looking at the labels, but I'm also feeling, because they looked on the label, they might look identical, but they're 2 different companies, and you're like, well, which one's better for me? And I can feel a subtle lean to one side versus the other. And so I'll be like, this one's better for weight. So I had that inner guidance and going, choose this one. And so I do that a lot, and you can use those skills, and you're just tapping into that level and trusting, saying which one's right for me, and your body will always guide you. And like you said, it'll repel against foods that are not good for you, unless you have an addiction to it. Yeah. If you're addicted to alcohol and you're like, is this good for me? And your body's like, but if you're just unbiased and you just really want to know, and you don't have an addiction towards that substance, you'll find that your body will tell you. And I even do that with certain farmers market stores, where like I might get bananas from them, and this other store has bananas, but I'll get apples from them.
and bananas from them. And they're both spray-free or organic, but for some reason, my body needs these bananas compared to these. And having this trust in ourselves again, that's what I really invite my listeners to do, is start trusting yourself again. Start understanding that life is play, and yes, you are that creator. And if you start to trust your body in certain areas, other areas of trust open up. And it's a much freer life when you listen before the pain teacher comes. Because eventually you will listen, but you will listen because the pain teacher is screaming at you. And it's actually a lot more fun to listen before that happens.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you said it. That's beautifully said, because I always tell my patients or my clients that how you do anything is how you do everything. So when you open up to the possibility of seeing things a different way, then other opportunities open up for you as well. And so if you're always doing the same thing the same way, you never see the opportunity to change. So explore, experiment, try different foods, try different exercises, drive a different way to work, and open up your mind so that you can see the world in a different way. And so, yes.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much for being on this podcast with me, Angie. I have enjoyed it a lot. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of things as well. And that's one of the reasons I love doing these, is getting people like you who has this incredible depth of knowledge and wisdom in very unique areas. Like, I love everything to do with health and vitality and spirituality. And you've got, you're the whole package. This is what you do. And this is why you're a great faculty member and a great advocate for the Chek Institute. This is why so many people and students are drawn to you as a teacher, is because you just have this, you know so much. And because you know so much, you can pull from the different areas. And because your personality isn't afraid to, I guess, be in the light and challenge people, or be cheeky, or be the trickster, whatever you need to be, it means that people feel not only seen and heard, but they could also access those deeper wisdoms that sometimes can come across a little bit too deep, or too, not boring, but too challenging. Unattainable. Yeah. And you make it attainable so that people can realize life is play and that wisdom is there to access. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast. In the show notes, we'll put the link to your book and your website and all the cool things that we talked about. And say hi to your goats, say hi to Paul and the rest of the family. And I'll see you doing other things with the Chek Institute as my career grows as well. And
yeah, I'll be in touch with you too, because I'm in the process of learning how to make goat milk soap. So that's my new fun project. So I'll be sharing that. Have you made it before?
No, I actually haven't. That's the one. I've made kefir, yogurt. I haven't made cheese yet. Like, you sent me that recipe.
So easy. I have another one too I can share with you. And I've been making lots and lots of different lovely cheeses, but my new thing is the soap. Stay tuned for that one.
Yeah. We'll have a lot of milk. We don't have any goats on milk at the moment, but as of this season, I'll never not have raw goat's milk in my life. Which is just such, and maybe this is something, if we ever do another podcast, we could really talk about the nutrition, because we didn't touch too much on that. And I actually didn't know you studied nutrition. Like, I know that
I'm a licensed certified nutritionist.
Yeah, so I didn't know that. I knew through Chek Institute that we know a lot about that, but maybe we could talk more about these. We hear a lot about superfoods, but eggs, the basics of what actually makes something nutritious and what actually brings it into our body and makes it bioavailable. So maybe we'll earmark that for the future anyway.
Great. I'd love to talk about that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.